Hey, hey. So we're live. Here to review a video. And the thing is, I get a video and I'll spend a day on it and I think, oh, I got to review this and I want to review it. And then I spend another day and another day. And then I spend five days or more on it. And then when I'm all done completely going through the video and just cutting it to ribbons, I don't want to do it anymore. It's like I'm done with it now. It's like it's like I satisfy myself, and it's like, but the whole point is to review a video on my YouTube channel. But I kind of lose steam. So
it's like it's kind of like scientific research, isn't it? You gotta do the work, but then you have to communicate your results.
Right, and then after you've done the work, it's like
some extra work.
You want to move on to something else. It's
Right.
like, yeah, I want to tell people what I found out. It's like, I'm not going to write the paper. I've satisfied my own curiosity. And I've done that over and over with, I did that with a huge philosophy thing. I went after the transcendental argument for God for months and months.
Huh.
And then I got all done with it. And then I never really said anything about it. Until last. Yeah, Scott has got some intermittent internet connections. Yeah, since you left, he moved out into the outback in Texas, where they still ride horses to go to the store.
Oh.
They don't have roads; they have trails, and there's rattlesnakes, and the internet is done with smoke signals and semaphores. So it's pretty slow. Anyway, you want to tell the audience, if we had one? We will have one eventually. What you're doing, or do you care, or do you not want
to? Yeah, I'm just working on college stuff right now, or well, I guess still working on university stuff right now. So I'm moving forward with my education, as I hope many of our viewers are as well, to some degree. And yeah, kind of gives me more ammunition, along with all the other stuff I've been looking up online, to go back and debunk creationists, I guess.
Evolutionary biology, I understand, is your choice.
Yep.
And
yeah, that's what I'm majoring in.
Yep. Subfield? Any idea? Like,
I guess maybe geology, if I can. Otherwise, I might be sticking with mostly biology.
Yeah, geology would be a good one, and it's a lot of fun. You gotta have a little inorganic chemistry for that one if you want to do that well.
Yeah.
Little window. Okay. Yeah, I want to show this. So start cam. Scott's back with us. And okay, this is one of Davidson's developmental gene regulatory networks. This is just kind of a sample picture of what I use for the thumbnail. And there is, let me see what's missing here. Okay, the end. Anyway, this is all about embryology and development. And Eric Davidson did a ton of work in this field, and he did it on echinoderms mostly. He did all kinds of developmental biology.
Yeah, those are good model organisms.
And every time you see one of these little regulatory networks in molecular biology on the right, it's probably because of Davidson, because he kind of created the nomenclature for it. And there's, the horizontal lines are like genes, and those curved box arrow lines are regulatory, like that'll upregulate an arrow, and the little bar on the bottom, let's see, you can see it right here, the bar on the bottom, that down regulates. And let's see what else we got.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, and there's just, but when you read them, some of them are pretty confusing. So I'm really looking forward to his book, which is, let me see, which one is his book? There's Wagner.
And he's already published that, I'm guessing.
Yeah. let's see, is this his book? Yeah, The Regulatory Genome for Animal Development. And it is a really wonderful book that gets into a ton of this stuff. Let's see, number of genes he gets into, and then he starts, I guess he talks about genetics for a long time. And then somewhere along the line, what do we got here? Cardiac genes, lens crystalline genes. That's pretty cool. And then I think he slowly gets into his nomenclature for developmental gene regulatory networks. And I kind of want to get into all this. It's pretty dense book. There's one right there, module B, module A, and it's pretty thick. So anyway, but that'll come into play here as we watch the video, I believe.
Always seems more intricate than it should be if it were supposedly designed.
Designed, right? Yeah, yeah, and that's part of what we're going to talk about a little bit is where we are and where we got to go from here on some of that stuff, and
Right.
And the opportunity for cherry picking quotes from biologists is just tremendous. I mean, because there's a little bit of scientists have their own idea. Like I have my own idea, and Leo has his own idea about physicalism, and Leo and I agree on 99% of the worldview. But when we get down to that 1%, you'll find me and Leo going after each other. And that's what happens to scientists. Unfortunately, they do it in print.
Right.
And when they do it in print, they're subject to cherry picking. And this has become
right, because it's not like you're writing a work to make sure, well, you're making sure it's clear to understand, but you don't write it to not have creationist cherry pick.
Right.
Like that's not part of the criteria for how you write it.
Yep. So Paul Nelson is a failed philosopher, creationist. This is his Wikipedia page. Let me see if I might have to lower that a little bit. Okay, Paul Nelson, creationist.
We have a creationist cherry picking biologist who isn't himself a biologist. I am shocked.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, he claims to have done work in molecular, but no, that was somebody else. Like this mathematician philosopher claimed. I was watching it this morning, and he said, "Yeah, and I've done work in molecular biology." Oh, yeah. I wonder what work. Yeah.
I think the work he did in molecular biology is one time he sneezed on someone's microscope, and that was pretty gross. So
what he actually did is he wrote down on a piece of paper. What is it? 20 to the 225th power to calculate how
every time they do,
yeah.
Every time a creationist writes that number down, an atheist just dies.
Was that Douglas Axe or was that someone else?
They got some of that stuff from Douglas Axe, but they all do the thing where they calculate, like they'll pick a 225 amino acid protein,
right?
And they'll say, okay, it's 20 to the 225th power possibilities, right? That's what the protein space is.
Right.
But what they don't tell you is that covers every single possible protein that there is. That's 225 or less amino acids long, right? That's every protein in the universe would basically have that be in that same space. So it's kind of misleading from the beginning. You know what I mean by that? There's like if there's a protein with 100 amino acids, one with 150, one with 225, another one with 225, all of them are in that same protein space, even though they're wildly different proteins, And
right. Well, another problem with it that I see is that a lot of different amino acid sequences can result in the same or similar proteins with similar functions. So that kind of muddies a bit as well in terms of the calculations involved with that.
Yeah, when you look at the protein space, there's a local network of hundreds or thousands of proteins that still work, or even millions of proteins that might work to do the same thing.
Right.
And Douglas Axe came up with that. What the hell was it? 10 to the 87th or 77th power or something for this one protein he worked on. But about 4 years before that, he did another paper where they modified a protein and they found that 25% of all the mutations they did were still active. They still worked.
Yeah,
And
it
no one
sounds
ever
about right.
talks about that Douglas Axe paper. So it's
It's another case of Snelling, basically, where he writes something in the creationist literature that contradicts what they've actually written in the scientific literature.
right. Okay, so Nelson was born in 58. He is the grandson of creationist author and Lutheran minister Byron Christopher Nelson. And he edited his grandfather's book writing. So you can see that he's always been a fundamentalist, right? All of his life. So that's really important. And then he joined the Discovery Institute, I think in the early 2000s. He got his PhD when he was 40 years old for some reason, from Chicago. I don't know what he did until then. He is part of the Discovery Institute's WEDS document.
Of course.
Yeah, I think, let's see. I've said that Nelson published his work derived from his he had a dissertation, Common Descent, Generative Entrenchment, and Epistemology and Evolutionary Inference, in which he's frequently cited, let's see, as an example of ID's Big Tent strategy. That's interesting. And I couldn't find his dissertation, his PhD thing online anywhere. And I think somebody else took a look at it, Sandwalker, one of those, and they couldn't find it either. So they couldn't find anything. Now, what's interesting about Paul Nelson, he's not only an intelligent designer, but he's also a young earther.
Oh, that's
So he's
interesting.
he admits that he has clashes with some of his ID buddies because he's a young earther. So.
Right, because not all intelligent, well, it gets kind of fuzzy because intelligent design is pretty much just creationism under a different wrapping, but like most ID proponents, as I understand it, don't consider themselves to be linked to creationism. So
yep,
that's actually kind of refreshing that one admits that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start at the end of the video and just play this part.
Okay.
And let me know if you can't hear it.
Research on evolution done within the neo-Darwinian framework over the past 30 years has discovered that that framework is actually false. And right now, if you go to an evolutionary biology meeting, as I do, with regularity, you will find people talking about this. It doesn't make its way into PBS specials or into textbooks or into the public face of science, but believe me, it's quite real.
Okay, that little piece. So
real quick, where does neo-Darwinism date from?
Probably around 1910.
Yeah, before the modern synthesis, really.
And so something that started in 1910 and was surpassed, in the 1950s, is wrong. Big deal.
Yeah, but he's making a stronger claim than the theory has been modified. He's saying that the framework is false.
Right.
And he's saying it doesn't enter into the public, and it does with them, but it doesn't enter into the textbooks. And the reason it doesn't enter into the textbooks is because neo-Darwinism is still the core of the theory. Right. And natural selection and mutations and change in allele frequency and all that stuff is still what you need to learn in order to understand evolution at all.
Right. Yeah. It's still pretty much one of the core parts of the modern synthesis is just what we would call neo-Darwinism, natural selection with Mendelian genetics, and so like it hasn't really gone away. It's just been subsumed by a larger encompassing theory.
Yeah, it's been modified by a whole lot of unbelievable complexity, and it gets worse and worse as we discover how, if it is designed, how bad the engineer that designed it is. So he's got like 1 million redundant systems. He's got systems that do nothing at all. He's got neutral systems,
Right.
systems that actually create trouble, problems for at different levels in a population. You'll have some humans who can basically run a 4-minute mile, or I don't know what the hell they're down to, or 3-minute mile, and others that can barely get out of their chair
Right.
because
Well,
of the.
I guess at that point it has to do, or well, it has to do at least to some degree with environment and health. So.
Oh yeah, but there's some of that stuff is genetic. We
Right,
have
yeah.
a genetic variation in what we can do, how much mitochondria we have, how much energy we have, tons of things. Some people have, that live with lifelong debilitating problems because of the complexity of those networks, and they have this one. Go ahead.
I think Dr. Zach Hancock actually did a recent video on that between whether genetics, environment, or a combination kind of controls behavioral traits and other aspects of human biology. So if anyone's interested, they should go check that out if they haven't seen it already.
Yeah. So we'll play the atheism view part and see how cute it is.
So think about it this way. Here's Atheismville. Very nice town, kind of like Sweden, Here's Belief Land. And you have an atheist friend, or
kind of like Kentucky.
Maybe he's an agnostic. He's not sure if he lives in Atheismville. He might be in the suburbs. And you're going to try to persuade him that God is real. Christianity, that's a bigger challenge. You just want him to acknowledge that there is a God who made the universe. So you sit down, there's the road, by the way, connecting the two. You sit down in your car, turn on the ignition, and he looks at your evidence gauge and he says, we're just never going to get there. You've barely got a quarter tank. That's a long road. You've got to get that red all the way up to the top of that gauge if you expect me to get over to Belief Land. This view treats evidence quantitatively as something you can kind of pile up. And at a certain point,
Because you can't.
it's compulsion. The atheist says, all right, you've accumulated enough. Now I have to believe. Now I've told you.
Okay. Comments?
I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, like that's
Yep.
what how evidence in science works. It's cumulative. Like that's why people say the evidence for evolutionary theory is overwhelming because, like, on its own, one individual line of evidence might be just circumstantial, but together they make a compelling case. So
Yeah.
he's kind of got it backwards here.
Yeah, and that's kind of why we believe in anything we believe in. We
Right.
don't believe it just because some friend told us or academia told us or we read it in a textbook or heard it on the news or
Right.
got it
You
from
have
a
to be
teacher.
really
We
convinced
believe
about
it.
something.
We believe it because we have hundreds of reasons to believe it that
Right.
through our life history. And
I mean, like, it makes sense. Like, if you're going to accept the truth of a claim, you really want to know all the aspects involved with that claim, don't you?
yeah, and it's interesting. And one of one of the people on my panel or on a panel I was on yesterday said that I believe in it because a lot of really smart people believe in it a lot. Like 90 some percent believe in it, and also and I'm guessing this person is an atheist. And another reason why they believe in it is because it's the only theory they got going if you're an atheist, right? If you don't believe God did it. So, but there's a lot of atheists like that. And but I think I'm different, and I think you're different, Andrew, in that you've looked a little further into it.
Right.
Like I'm
Yeah.
always
Yeah, I
looking.
would agree. Some atheists, some theists for it, like lots of people, like for various different claims, they don't have the time or mental energy to go into the subject as deeply as like a PhD science. Well, obviously not like probably not beyond like a high school or college level. So they kind of have to just
Yeah.
take the word for some other people or of experts, which I mean isn't necessarily bad. I mean, like we have a finite lifespan. We don't have
Right.
infinite resources to go over all of the mountains of data that's been accumulated over time in various scientific fields. So you kind of have to at some point take the word of a trusted expert. So
Yeah, and if I had to do the same that I've done with biology and molecular biology with physics, I would need another lifetime for that. So I have to just defer to people who know more about it than I do.
right.
It's kind
And
of
that's not an argument from authority per se. That's just saying, hey, these people who have spent their lifetime studying the subject are more likely to know something that I don't when it comes to particular X claim or whatnot. So, I mean,
right.
that's what we do for like when we go to the auto mechanic for repairing our car. Like, we don't just say, well, you're just using an argument from authority trusting the auto mechanic. No, you're just these people have been working on cars a lot longer than you have, so they're probably going to know something that you don't.
Yeah, but here's the rub. Okay, this Discovery Institute and AIG and all of these places, they know about these atheists who haven't looked very deeply into evolution. And they have a lot of people who are believers that haven't looked into it at all other than listening to them. And they're just bent out of shape because these atheists don't believe in God. And when they argue with these atheists that, aren't molecular biologists, the first thing that atheist will tell them is, I have no evidence for God. I have no reason to believe in God. You have not produced a compelling case. To me, it sounds like the same as the Santa Claus story my parents tried to sell me on when I was 4 years old. And they say, so what they want to do is they want to commandeer the science, change it, modify it. And he'll talk about it here in a minute. So that they can go ahead and convince the atheists without any evidence for God that, evolution isn't possible, therefore God. So that's what they're doing. That's what their whole program is. And that's why in the last, 40, 50 years, they've gotten into science more and more and more.
Right,
And
because it used to be just about like faith-based positions and personal anecdotes, religious experiences. But once they realize that's not going to convince some people, they kind of want to take a different approach.
Right. And the other best way to do it was to hit your kid with it when they were 2 years old and start taking them to church. And then, and brainwash them that way. But then they get 18 and they go to college. Now, that's the other thing that really bothers them, is their kids are going to college and they're like, what? They're learning about this stuff and they're saying it is possible.
Right. It's like, why wasn't I told or taught any of this when I was younger?
Right.
Which, I mean, that's kind of the point of college anyway, isn't it? Is to kind of open your bubble and
it is
allow you to learn more and learn more about yourself, for that matter. So
time for you to be your own adult, and differ from your parents, become the version 2.0. Right. Okay. I think let's see what he.
Yeah.
It's because that does not recognize the role of the individual in evaluating evidence. In that failed Blagojevich trial, 11 people were sure he was guilty. One was not. And it wouldn't matter how high they piled it. She just wouldn't change her mind because of that transaction. Now, we need to notice.
Okay, but
Russell's view.
Eyewitness testimony is different from scientific measurements.
Right.
Like, there's a reason why eyewitness testimony is known to be unreliable most of the time. So that's not that's just a weird analogy.
Yeah. Comparing it to a trial where one person holds out, you're talking about a person's life that you're judging. It's a little more serious than belief in God or whatever.
Well, he seems like he's trying to make the case that like evidence is subjective in that case, but it isn't.
Yeah. Yep.
At least not the kind of evidence that we're talking about here.
Yeah. What happens to the
rather recent in human thinking? This is Isaac Newton. one of the founders of Western science, and in his book, The Optic, in fact, right throughout all of his writings, Newton was absolutely sure that the evidence pointed to a creator.
Okay. 1643 to 1727. They do this a lot.
That's
And
before.
they focus on, yeah, and they focus on, and for Darwin, it's like over 150 years since this whole Darwinian revolution happened, right?
Right.
I mean, that's twice as old as I am, and that's old. I mean, God.
And it's kind of even worse than misquoting the first paragraph where Darwin supposedly says that he has trouble understanding an eye can evolve without quoting the rest of the section there. Is like you're quoting someone before Darwin who didn't even have a concept of natural selection back then. Oh, I'm hearing that now.
Oh,
It's still there.
That's probably
Oh, I guess
StreamYard. StreamYard every now and then forgets to echo cancel.
Yeah, I just heard it. Never mind. Continue.
Yep, and I'm having a little trouble every now and then. My audio cuts out. Did it cut out on the video? Did you hear it cut out, or is that just for me?
I
think
have a video. Yeah.
My computer is running at capacity right now. Okay. So anyway, this is something happened to the evidence. And so what happened to the evidence? And what is wrong with this? Why is this clipping? Let me see here if I can adjust this a little bit. Come on. I can't seem to get that to drop down. No, I know what I can do. I can't do that even. Oh my goodness. Come on. You got to find there's got to be a sweet spot here. Yeah, I think there is, except it's going to clip off. Oh no. I got to mess with OBS again. Apparently I had a problem. Anyway, okay, so what happened to the evidence? This is the next section I've got.
Change how science viewed the evidence. Well, what really happened was the Darwinian Revolution. In particular, the introduction of the mechanism of natural selection to explain what appeared to be design in living things. So for Newton, there was clear evidence of design in biology. Wasn't there for Russell, and that's because Darwin's proposal of natural selection changed how people viewed living things.
It did.
Yeah, kind of. But I mean, he didn't change how we look at evidence. He didn't change.
Right, yeah. Like science was around right before Darwin, so
yeah,
we knew how to evaluate evidence. He just changed our understanding of biology. He's called the father. Well, yeah, he's one of the fathers of evolutionary biology for a reason.
Right. Change the evidence. He well, the entire century, basically, not just Darwin, but a whole lot of thinkers changed how we looked at life. Because I think just a few hundred years before, we didn't know what a germ was.
Oh yeah.
And it was killing us, and then we found out what a germ was.
Everyone thought it was bad air, basically, miasma theory, and then came along the germ theory of disease with John Snow and Louis Pasteur, and science marches forward.
Yeah, and sterilization completely changed the statistics on child mortality during childbirth. Because you mean I should wash my hands before I do that?
Right.
Yeah, you should. Anyway, I'm not sure if
a strictly natural process for the origin of biological design. So Richard Dawkins puts it this way: the theory of natural selection provides a mechanistic causal account of how living things came to look as if they had been designed for a purpose. Came to look as if. In other words, you look at the eye of a salmon or the eye of an eagle.
Okay, we know about all that. Well, we got a lot happening in chat that I missed. Okay, made by Jim.
We attracted some I don't know if it's Jim Bob followers or just Jim Bob himself and some of his.
Who's Scott Bonas? Let's see. Icarus, do they have value to you, or do they have intrinsic value independent of your feelings, opinions? Icarus, I didn't ask the question that you value something actively. Okay, so where does this go back to? Tell me where the values exist in nature. Oh, no. So, okay, Jim Bob is trying to use the transcendental argument that, atheists can't have values because values don't exist in nature.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they do. If there's a human around, humans are natural and humans have values. So, yeah, it exists in nature because humans.
Okay,
my
can
gosh.
I just respond quickly to one comment here? So Mitchell McCall, gold has the ability to maintain its molecular structure in space. Well, first off, gold isn't a molecule. It's an element. It's an atom. So there's no molecular structure to maintain. So I don't know what he's even referring to there.
What is he talking about?
I don't know.
What the hell is going on in chat, guys? Oh my God, I missed it. Let's see, it's rooted in recognition that every individual possesses intrinsic value simply by virtue of being. Oh, okay, Scott, that's right. Okay, Mitchell McCall. Gold
Everyone,
has.
chat, please behave.
I typed it from memory. Why does that bother you so much, Mitchell McCall? What is he talking about? Gold in space. So what? It's an element.
Okay, it all stems back from some comment that that we're all just animals with no value because we don't believe in a God who provides something called intrinsic value, though they don't really. The term is meaningless. So and it goes. Somehow gold became an example of things that are valued. What do you mean by value? It's just one of those spiraling live chat discussions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's just ignore it. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's Jim Bob, and apparently Bob brought a posse over. He's probably okay. Anyway, yeah. Let's go ahead and do this. Where was I?
Which is rather sophisticated.
Oh, okay. That's just about the eye and stuff like that. So he's making the point that it looks like it's designed. The eye looks like it's designed. Therefore, it's designed. Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, because in some sense it was designed. It was just
understand
intelligently designed.
Yeah. To understand what happened to the evidence, we need to ask what cause best explains the data of biology. So that would be, like abductive reasoning or whatever, natural selection or another kind of cause. Before we do, however, there's an important historical detail to consider. And I wonder if I don't want to miss. Oh, okay. So we got Richard Dawkins. Okay. They like to trot him out. And 738, I missed something. So let's see. Because of natural, okay, we got Ernst Marr. Yeah, I missed some stuff here on Ernst Marr at 738. So let's see, the octopus. I guess I need to go back to where I was. I'm sorry. I'm a flawed human.
Came to look as if, in other words, you look at the eye of a salmon or the eye of an eagle, or you look at the brain of an octopus, which is rather sophisticated. They're like honorary vertebrates, they're so smart. Look at any biological design, and it seems to indicate that there was an intellect that put it together. And Dawkins says it only appears that way because natural selection now explains that we know better. And this view is very widely held by biologists. Ernst Mayr, for instance, who had a long career at Harvard, right up until 100 years of age, said natural selection is so important for evolutionary biologists because it seems to explain, or it does explain, the design of living things instead of, that is by a natural process instead of by divine action. Yeah. So to understand what happened to the evidence, we need to look at natural selection and ask.
Yeah, Ernst Marr is, he lived till he was 100 years old, and he was active until he was 100 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of cool. What did he do here? So he didn't cherry pick a quote there, but.
Oh, okay.
what evolutionary biologists claim that it does. So that will be our little case study this morning. Before we get there, though, I want to give you a very interesting historical detail. Bertrand Russell had a very high regard for the power of the design argument. You know, there are several classical arguments for God's existence, the ontological, the moral, and so forth. He thought all of them had some kind of logical flaw. But when it came to design, he said, this argument actually works. It depends on what the evidence shows. So in this passage, he says, this argument says that there are features of the world that look like they were caused by a beneficent purpose. That is something with an intellect, a mind like ours. This argument has no formal logical defect. Its premises are empirical, that is, they're drawn from nature, and its conclusion is reached in accord with the usual canons of inference, the way that we do in science. So he says, the question of whether or not we're going to accept the design argument depends on comparatively detailed considerations. Now, what does he mean by that?
Bingo. So, yeah, Bertrand Russell was a mathematician and a logician and a philosopher, and he's a brilliant man. When did he die, Russell? Bertrand Russell.
I'm not sure.
I don't know, Bertrand Russell. Anyway, it was a while ago. So, I mean, he wasn't a contemporary molecular biologist or anything, but he did say that the question turns on comparatively detailed considerations, which is what we've been doing for the last 70 years since he said this.
Right, figuring out how each of these supposedly like irreducibly complex structures evolved and so forth. Right. So.
And this was 1945 before we knew what DNA
was. Oh yeah, we've done a lot since then.
Yeah, we've done quite a bit since then. So, and we're coming up on another bookmark.
Got to look at the evidence in detail. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to dig deep,
are we,
and weigh what kind of cause can explain the biological evidence in front of us. And I want to do, as I said, a little case study here in a puzzle that Richard Dawkins and Ernst Mayr claim natural selection can explain. And that's the origin of animal body plans.
Thanks, Scott.
Now, think about what you would want a theory of evolution to do. If you're a biologist, let's say, or just a curious human being, you wouldn't be content with that theory if it just explained to you why one moth had slightly more pigment in its wing than another moth. You want to know, where did the moth itself come from? Where did oak trees and blue whales and bacteria and human beings themselves, where did we come from as organisms? Well, that's really, in this instance, we're going to look now just at animals. That's the question that we'll look at. So here's a little worm. Very, very small. It's about 1,000 cells in the adult. And you can find these worms, they're nematodes, in the soil. If you have a pretty powerful small hand microscope, you can see them. They consume bacteria. Here's a fruit fly, Drosophila. If you have overripe bananas, as my wife and I did this summer, unfortunately, we had a lot of these buzzing around our kitchen. They're actually very small, but quite, which if you go here at Lush along the Pacific coast. Now you'll notice that they don't have the same overall architecture. A worm's a worm, a fly's a fly, an urchin is an echinoderm. Fly's an arthropod. Their architectures are different. They're not the same kind of living thing, and it's not easy to interconvert them. So this is going to be a real challenge for evolution. Where did these architectures come from?
Yeah, that's so. This whole thing is going to be about a bit of controversy that a whole bunch of other evolutionary biologists have been getting into, that resulted in the extended synthesis and the third way with Dennis Noble and all of that stuff. And what it's based on is there's two kinds. There's basically, they see two ways of looking at this stuff, right? There are these networks of regulation where one thing kicks off another thing, kicks off another thing. And basically they're very, very complicated, and they have feedback where, you know, one thing will create itself and then it'll make sure that it limits itself, or it'll create itself, and it'll unlimit itself, so it goes all the way to one end or whatever. There's all these mechanisms. Okay, there are core mechanisms that affect the body plan of a clade, basically a huge clade of organisms, arthropods, vertebrates, or whatever.
Right.
And they all share the same.
Yeah.
They have that core body plan, right? And during the Cambrian explosion, or the Cambrian brilliance is what I call it. During that time, a lot of these body plans became established, and once established, those basic core mechanisms, Davidson makes a big deal that they cannot be changed. They're very stable, and if you try to change them, you're going to end up with one or two things: either it is going to go back and self-regulate itself and go back into that same plan, or the organism will die before it's born. So not only will it not reproduce, but it won't even have its first nibble of food. You know, it'll die in the womb or die in the egg.
Yeah.
And now then there's, at the periphery of these networks, Davidson points out, there are things that cause variation, like variation in beak size and color and limb size, and, you know, the attachment of muscles and all of that. And these are at the periphery of these networks. And so that is the science behind it. And that's
Right.
one of the things that they're looking at. So
Right. It's like the core developmental pathways for like the laying out the entire body plan, like Hox genes and
yep.
the anterior posterior axis and how the segments develop, stuff like that. That's relatively conserved, but like other gene regulatory networks that are built on top of that are a bit more variable. So
Yep. And these
they're
are
more evolvable in some sense.
These are the body plans that he talks about. The worm, and what do we got? Drosophila, and we got how's that? Spondylocentrotus purpuratus. That's the echinoderm that we know the most about, and that's what Davidson did a lot of his work on. So, and let's see, where are we in the transcript?
And it's interesting. I think he chose those three specific organisms on purpose because, yeah, they do look rather different from each other. But if you look at especially some of the clades in the fossil record, but even some clades alive today, you can see some, maybe not like direct lineal connections, but some, the phenotypic boundaries definitely get blurred a bit between like worms and arthropods and echinoderms and vertebrates and stuff like that. So it's not
at the very
clear cut, as he's saying here.
At the very early stages of the egg, of the zygote dividing, they share a lot of gene pathways still.
Right.
There's
a lot of deep homology going on.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that the proteins that are created by these genes have a difference to them between these different clades that almost perfectly represents the time we think since we had common ancestors, right? So
Right.
the molecular clock works, and we can see the differences. I mean, these are, we can see that they're the same gene networks, and that they're obviously they were the same DNA at one time from a common ancestor, and they were modified, but they are different enough that like between us and the mouse, and between us and that echinoderm you see there, there's a hell of a lot of difference, right? I mean, we're more different than the echinoderm than we are with the mouse, and it maps perfectly to when we think we branched off. So that's the interesting thing. So if God did it, God did it with an egg timer, a molecular egg timer, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
so God
it's
was like,
interesting the development, molecular clock, and the fossil record seem to agree with each other for some reason.
They all agree with each other.
I wonder why.
And like, if God had really designed it, he would have, because he's using exactly the same regulatory networks and the same family of proteins, there would be no reason in hell for our proteins to differ from that echinoderm as much as they do. because it would have worked just as well if he hadn't done anything at all. So but the other possibility is that God had a dull pencil, because, God created a lot of animals, right? I mean, so while he was drawing, his pencil probably got dull, and that's why some proteins are different. I don't know. That's just me speculating.
Yeah. Well, it seems weird to me because God is supposed to be this all-knowing, all-powerful being, and yet creationists seem to want to limit him to having to reuse certain body parts and body plans, at least to some degree,
Yeah.
in this very specific pattern across what we would call the tree of life. So it's
Yep.
it's weird that he would choose to do that rather than any other body plan, because he wouldn't be constrained by like physical necessities that human designers are constrained by. So it's always a strange argument to me.
Yeah, if you found a fossil of 1966 Mercury, or what was it, Mercury, or was it Lincoln, and another fossil of a Ford Thunderbird, you would find out that they had exactly the same engine, the same frame, the exact same. All they did was a few modifications, but there was no molecular difference between the Lincoln and the Mercury, or the Thunderbird and the Mercury. They were like, you could compare them. And that was designed. So you can tell design, because you'll find exactly the same engine, exactly the same frame. There is absolutely no difference, but we have a difference with it kind of terms. Anyway, we got made by Jim Bob Made by Jim Bob is smart enough to be stupid. He's smart enough to read about information and come up with the name and say dumb things like, please tell me how evolution produced information.
Yeah, it's just a Dunning-Kruger effect all over again.
Yep.
No,
yep.
Just ignore him.
How does chemistry explain how it does what it does? Just another example. What?
Read a biochemistry textbook. Like there are
chemistry. How does
like
chemistry do what it does?
How the proteins interact with each other, how they exchange molecules, how they change their shape and conformation in order to accept and deliver those molecules. Like all this stuff is well understood. So, there are obviously some protein interactions that we're still investigating because we obviously haven't learned about every biochemical pathway yet. But like the broad rules of it are pretty well understood.
Yep. Oh, let's see. I guess we can keep going here.
Evaluate natural selection, we first need to understand how natural selection operates. Now, let me stress to you this morning, I think natural selection is a real process. We have lots of examples.
Okay, he's going to go ahead and explain natural. I think I'm going to jump ahead here. I don't think.
Well, at least he acknowledges that.
What's that?
I say at least he acknowledges natural selection. I mean, that's not too surprising, but at least we have a baseline here.
Yep. Okay, so that is at 10. That's at 12. Okay, can't leave offspring. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. Line here. What the hell? That's bottom line. Okay.
So think about it this way. Imagine someone with the intellect of Albert Einstein and the physique of Michael Phelps. Okay, put those two together. Absolute brilliance, intellectually, Olympic specimen in terms of their physical characteristics. One problem, that guy is sterile. His testicles are not producing any sperm. It doesn't matter what else is right with him. He is a dead end and invisible to evolution because he can't leave any offspring. Whereas Paul Nelson, who very obviously does not have.
Yeah, okay. So Paul Nelson's going to survive, and the Superman isn't. So bottom line, if you cannot leave viable offspring, then
I mean, yeah, we know there are trade-offs in evolution, so.
Right. And that has to do with genetic drift and some other things that we added to the neo-Darwinistic picture, and also neutral selections. Okay. So we got
right. I mean, like, obviously not all hybrids are going to be viable, so, and no one said they would be.
Yeah.
Like we've
Some
probably
of
known that since like Darwin. Like you cross some things, they're obviously not going to work as well. I mean, that's part of artificial selection, isn't it?
Yep. So
So
let's
has
see.
this Nelson made his point yet? I'm really not getting what the point is.
If within species, I think he gets a little. I don't know if he gets to his. Well, he gets to his point at the end, I think.
Yeah, because I heard him say, well,
Just
Albert
remember,
Einstein
you've
brain
got
with the Michael
kids. You're
Phelps
fed
body.
as far as evolution is concerned.
What's that?
I said because what I've heard him say so far is the sterile Michael Phelps Albert Einstein hybrid will not pass on its genes, but the other one will. But that's assuming that survival is dependent on having an Albert Einstein brain and a Michael Phelps physique, which it isn't. I mean, it's not the, you don't have to have the best of physical or mental abilities for evolution. You just have to, or, for natural selection, you just have to have good enough so that you can pass on your genes. And
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
How are you going to pass on your genes? Well, you can't be sterile, so I'm not understanding what point he's building up to.
Right.
Wait.
Like it's an optimal phenotype, but it's not like it's not perfection. Like,
And he's probably
how we
thinking
can
in
measure
terms.
perfection.
Yeah, he's probably thinking in terms of survival of the fittest too, which is really just not the best way to think of it, knowing what we've discovered in the field since.
Yeah,
He's
good.
a little better in that he does introduce the possibility of genetic drift and
That's good.
Basically other things that modify natural selection. Natural selection, I think, works best when you have a certain size population, right? And it'll work faster if you have a real small population, but then it could work in favor of extinction if you have a small population. Or, if you luck out, you might end up with something that eventually becomes speciation. If you have a really large, super large population, it's going to run a lot slower, I think. I don't know. But you're still going to have something happening. I don't know. Anyway, population.
Do we want to let Austin Sims in maybe? I feel like he's been on the show, hasn't he?
Yes, he has. Austin can, I can put a link out in our phone messages. Let me see.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
More the merrier, right?
Copy. Yeah.
He's talking about the final experiment. I'm not going to watch any flat Earth videos, so I'm just curious how that went from his recollection.
The what?
The final you haven't heard the it's like they brought I guess some flat earthers and globers, quote unquote, to Antarctica to watch the sun and see if it matched, whether it would match flat Earth predictions or not.
No.
The final thing they would agree on, so that if it didn't happen, flat earthers would recant their position, basically.
Which they won't do in face of disconfirming evidence.
Yeah.
They just don't do that. Neither do creationists.
Yeah, I made a decision a while ago that I don't believe in flat earthers. I don't believe they exist. So I never have to think about them.
Yeah, I don't give flat earthers the time of day. I was just curious how things went exactly.
So McToon was debunking them in real time last night.
So was this McToon person down in Antarctica? Because isn't the idea that you don't see the sun in Antarctica or something like that? Or what's the... I don't know.
Something about like the sun rising at a particular time during this part of the year in Antarctica.
Okay.
Like that wouldn't happen during a flat Earth versus a round Earth or something. Gotcha. I don't remember the exact details. Yeah, because I don't look into flat Earth stuff. But.
Okay. Yeah, it's weird, but they're not going to recant even if faced with disconfirming evidence. That's just not the nature of the sickness.
Yeah.
So Austin, are you in a point where you can come in? If you're out there, if you're listening, or if you're fighting with chat, maybe you're not listening to us. Okay, I'm going to go on with the video a little bit. I jumped ahead a little bit to 1609. Actually go there. Actually go to the literature. Okay, I'm gonna back
But if
up
you
here.
actually go to the biological literature, as I do professionally, and look for the evidence where natural selection actually is shown to be causally effective in building eyes or ears or brains or wings or nervous systems, it's just not there. And in fact, this has been known for a long time, even at the zenith, even at its most popular period in the 1960s. Natural selection left many evolution.
Okay, its most popular period in the 1960s.
I don't know why he would call one period more popular than the other. Maybe more productive in terms of research, but
I don't think it was very productive even back then. I mean, it was. We didn't really get going until 1980 something, the late 70s.
It depends on your perspective, I guess.
Yeah, it was just a different period of time. It was just a different era.
Yeah. It's like
You
if you
get
want to
by
focus on
different
like
discoveries.
yeah, it's like if you want to focus on like population genetics, all that was the groundwork for that was laid down pretty early on. But like obviously genetics and developmental biology, that wasn't till much later.
Yeah, so now we're going to start quote picking. Okay, so there's something called the Wistar Conference, and I think it was in, when was Wistar? Let me see if I can. Okay, Wistar was.
Yeah, no worries, Austin, if you can't join. We're just curious.
Wistar and Wishnack. Oh, I wonder if I can make this. Can I just get rid of you guys? Yeah, I think I can. Except that is, I got to go to Chrome All. See if Chrome All works.
Yeah. So you're going to take the comment down?
Oh, yeah. Me too.
Thank you.
Did I click it twice? Okay. So let's see. There's Wistar and Wishniak. I don't know what Wishniak is. A Philadelphia story and a question. There's a big long thing here where they tried to, I think they went and tried to find this quote that he's going to. Well, let's go back to the quote first and see what he's got to say.
So Conrad Waddington, for instance, the man on this slide, was an embryologist who worked closely with the core of the evolutionary community in the middle decades of the last century to try to sort out evolution. And at a famous meeting in Philadelphia in 1966, he said, evolution, the textbook theory that we have, doesn't really explain what we want it to. What he called the whole real guts of evolution are left outside the mathematical theory. And by that, he means the mathematical expression of natural selection. In particular, this problem is unsolved.
Okay, so the whole Wistar conference was it was basically a bunch of population geneticists and mathematical modelers. Just a lot of questions about population genetics not quite working and their models not working. And there was a whole lot of, there was a big kerfuffle over it. And as with most, I think it was a conference that almost broke into fights. I mean, I guess the transcripts are amazing if you read them, but I couldn't get all of the transcripts. They want $360 for them. and so somebody said it's kind of like reading War and Peace. And it's just absolutely amazing. But this conference happened in, I think it was 1968 or something like that, the Wistar conference. And this is where he's going to do some cherry picking, right? Let's see.
Hey,
Hello, Austin.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Austin. So you get to meet Andrew Cumming. I don't know if you guys met before.
not on the live stream, I don't think.
Lay back down. Go lay back down, sick little girl. I'm not trying to broadcast your face all over the internet. Go on. Go.
It's a kid. Let's see.
That's my daughter, Tabitha. She's sick right now.
Well, I tell Tabitha to get better.
Yeah, I hope she gets
And
better.
that means you're going to be sick in 3 days. So that's how that works.
I never stop being sick.
Yeah, my grandkids make me sick constantly. Just, one respiratory thing after another.
Right. Okay, we got the Wistar Institute Symposium 1966, which was the big kerfuffle where there were just tons of quote lines that came out of this from, the impossibility of evolution working and all this crap. So it was, let me see if I can get that framed properly. Apparently that ain't going to work either. What the hell is going on, man? Okay. Anyway, let's see. The symposium, contents, video history, 1965. Somebody got a bone up their crossways up their butt. She isn't listening, is she? She shouldn't be listening to us, Austin.
She's not paying attention. She's watching some guy play Minecraft.
Okay, this is not for prime time. Anyway, these are the people. So Conrad Howell Waddington was the principal of archetypes in evolution, and Waddington, what was his quote? What was his great quote here? Why is that? Waddington.
He said, evolution.
The whole real evolution, which is how do you come to have horses, tigers, and things, is outside of mathematical theory. And what Waddington actually said, and I think somebody else they said, if the mathematics doesn't work, then your model is wrong. Your mathematical model is wrong. That's what you need to do. You don't need to worry about evolution not working. You need to fix your model. And they had a lot of in 1966, we still had we were just coming out of vacuum tube computers. And computers occupied gymnasiums, right? So we didn't have a whole lot of sophisticated modeling going on.
But my question is to that quote, to that statement by Waddington.
Yep.
Didn't we have kind of a rich population genetics, mathematical
Yeah, we did.
theory?
I don't think Waddington was a population geneticist. So
Okay, so he was unaware of what mathematics was being used for.
I'm sure he was maybe somewhat
knew.
aware of it.
Yeah, he was a real great. He's the one that created the idea of evolutionary landscapes and canalization and all of that stuff. When you see those little diagrams of the like peak landscapes, peak fitness and all of that, that's all from Waddington. And
I think Sewell Wright actually came up with the idea of adaptive landscapes.
did he? Let's see, Let's see, Waddington.
Also, I'm hearing some feedback.
Yeah, there's something going on, Austin. You might have to mute a little bit. Not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I just did a little quick Google. It looks like I was thinking of Price's theorem, which is kind of the bedrock of population genetics, and it wasn't developed until 1970. So Waddington may have just been premature in his declaration of the death of mathematical theory in evolution.
Which theorem you said?
Price's theorem. If you go to Zach Hancock's channel, he really explains Price's.
Yeah, he does a good job of that.
Really well. Yeah.
Okay, so
Waddington
introduced the concept of canalization, the ability of an organism to produce the same phenotype despite variation in the genotype. Okay, canalization, it means that there's this feedback that self-corrects the organism a little bit. And he also identified a mechanism called genetic assimilation, which would allow an animal's response to environmental stress to become a fixed part of its developmental repertoire. And they went on to show that the mechanism would work. I don't know about that. That sounds Lamarckian, but I think didn't he come up with maybe epigenetics was his word. Waddington's epigenetic landscape.
Zach just did a really great video on epigenetics, or at least he has a really great video. I don't know if it's recent or if I just watched it, for the first time.
We should find that. And now I got to put it in the description. So if you could find that, Scott, that'd be great.
I will get on that.
Yeah, I think he came up
with a video on hereditarianism.
What's that?
Would that be Zach's video on hereditarianism?
It might be. Yep.
Because he does talk about
Anyway,
epigenetics, I think.
If he's very recent, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, phenotypic
probably.
plasticity. He came up with the idea of epigenetics, but he called it genetic assimilation. And somebody else later on named it, I think, epigenetics. Ernst Haeckel before him, that evolution mainly occurred through mutations that affected developmental anatomy. That we know, that we agree with. Okay. And then, but he died he was born in 1905 and he died in 1975. So you can see how dated some of this information that this Nelson is bringing in, right?
Right.
Okay, we'll go on.
No, it's from after the 2000s for some
Really
reason.
explain what we wanted to. What he called the whole real guts of evolution are left outside the mathematical theory. And by that, he means the mathematical expression of natural selection. In particular, this problem is unsolved. It's wide open. And there's, of course,
in 1968,
a greater variety of body plans. You come to recognize these even as a small child. You can distinguish a spider from a sand dollar. They're just not the same kind of organism. They have fundamentally different architectures. Of course, we belong to that group in the lower right, the chordates. If evolution can't explain the origin of these differences, the theory is in deep trouble, deep trouble. Now, textbook theory, the theory that you would get in a public high school here or university at UCLA or USC, holds that all the animals stem from a common ancestor. That kind of funny-shaped thing in the bottom there called bilateria, that's just a fancy name for an organism with bilateral symmetry. We are bilaterally symmetrical by and large. You know, arm on this side.
So bilateria is the proposed common ancestor of all. When we split off from and ended up with bilateral symmetry in development, and that happened back in the Ediacaran. I think around
we've had a few Ediacaran bilaterian fossils that kind of match that description. So.
Yeah, and that goes from like 550 million years ago to 1 billion years ago. Primarily during the Neoproterozoic. I think that's, what is that, 550?
The Ediacaran specifically?
Yeah, the Ediacaran is 541 to 5.
The Ediacaran is about 541 to 630-ish million years ago.
Yeah, Neoproterozoic goes back to 1 billion years. So sometime within that, this bilateria came out. Let's see what he says about it.
Put a dividing line down the middle of us, and you have roughly mirror images on either side, even though our internal organs aren't quite symmetrical. That theory has never been demonstrated. Bilateria is hypothetical. There are two different ways of drawing it there. One has a few more details than the other. That's a hypothetical construct to tie together what are, in fact, very different kinds of organisms. And this problem, this unsolved problem in the origin of animals, is well known within the discipline of evolutionary biology. Wallace Arthur is the English developmental geneticist. I met him when I was a graduate student in Chicago. And in the late 80s, he was becoming very unhappy with textbook theory. And in a publication at that time, he said, we don't really know how body plans originate. And the examples we have in our textbooks aren't adequate. So what he calls there Biston betullaria, that's the Linnaean name for the famous peppered moth of England, which many of you may remember from high school biology. This is a classic example of natural selection in action where pollution changes the color of the environment such that the light-colored moths are preferentially preyed upon by birds because birds can see them, where the dark-colored moths have better camouflage. And what happens in that process is the whole population shifts. It's an example of natural selection, but Arthur says this really doesn't explain where the moth itself came from. There are data.
Okay. before we go on to Davidson. So, got this, and I lost my note on it, unfortunately, but that he went on to talk about body plans. I believe it was in a book. I'm not going to talk about it because I apparently lost my note on it. I have so many tabs open here. Where's Wallace Arthur? Okay, here we go. Okay, this is Wallace Arthur. Oh, Wikipedia, come on, quit begging me for money. I pay you every month. Okay, born in 1952. Let's see. He is, let's see, scientific work. He describes a bit of a maverick. Let's see, Evo Devo, his later work at the interface between evolution and development, Evo Devo. So he worked a lot on how body plans come out. And let's see, I think I have a book by him, Series of Life. He wrote a bunch of books. So he wrote
So he's the guy saying that natural selection can't deal with changes in body plan.
What did he say? He was saying that one can argue that there's no direct evidence for a Darwinian origin of body plans. He's saying that it's not that they don't want to look specifically at genes and cis translational mechanisms for genes. That it's a wider problem. It's a more complicated problem than that, having to do with gene regulatory networks. And this is what he said at the start, but then that was a quote mine, and I believe I found it in one of his books, but I can't remember which one, so we're not going to be able to talk about it.
Well, when you do find it, well,
silencing us?
Follow video.
Silencing us, yes. Okay, stop with the fundraiser wiki. Let's see, biological universe. You can see that he wrote a whole lot on developmental biology, and he certainly wasn't of the opinion that God had to do it and that it was a failure for evolution. He was just saying that the mechanism that modifies, the finches' beaks and the color of butterflies and whatever is a different kind of mechanism than the mechanism that's creating body plans. That was something.
Well, isn't he just saying that it's not that mutations alone don't account for changes in body plan? Because isn't the difference between the black and the white a mutation?
Yeah, they actually do, but it's just it is the wrong emphasis to basically look at these mutations of particular proteins and stuff. And this is where it gets real difficult, where these guys are practically talking past one another.
Yeah.
Because mutation and natural selection are always going to be the core of this model. That is the only way for it to happen, is that there is a mutation in the genome, and that gets it ends up in the population, or it branches off and you have a speciation or whatever. But all of that is there. They're just complaining that we can't look at it in this simple manner, that there's like there's a gene for your right arm and a gene for your left arm, and a gene for your eyeball.
He's kind of complaining about the examples used in the textbook to illustrate natural selection for these kind of simple changes in coloration, but like the same principles apply to developmental changes. They're just kind of different in scale and complexity, I guess.
Okay, and then we're going to get to this. So this is 2006, and I got to go find it. Okay, where are we? Let's see here. 2006. Okay, contrary. So these are the apples and oranges. So where are the apples and oranges? Oh my goodness. I'll go ahead and play a little bit of this, and then I'll see if I can pop it up.
In a paper a few years ago, said what we see with things like moths versus the question of where moths came from, these are fundamentally different problems, as different as apples and oranges. And we cannot understand the origin of the moth itself just from the small-scale evolution that we see. Well, you can go back in the history of evolutionary theory in the last century and find the point at which the mistake was made. Now, it wasn't really a mistake. Anytime you do science, you have to make assumptions about the world. And the founders of textbook evolutionary theory said, let's assume that micro or small scale evolution and macro or large scale evolution are the same. Just add time to micro and you'll get macro. Dobzhansky, who was one of the founders of textbook theory, in the mid-30s said, we can't observe macroevolution. It took place over a long time. So what we have to do is take microevolution and extrapolate that over time. And he said, we'll do this reluctantly. We'll put a reluctant sign of equality between micro and macroevolution, and we'll push our investigations as far ahead as we can on the basis.
Okay. I'm still not able to find that particular quote. I hate myself. I really hate myself, right? Hang on a second here. I have too many things open. Where are we at? Let's go back to that. Take a look.
And the foundation really doesn't explain. Example of natural selection.
Where did it go?
Eric Davidson at Caltech.
Okay. Contrary to classical evolutionary theory, the process that drives small changes. Oh, I know where that is. Okay. Sorry. Let's see. Davidson. Where are we at? Book. Wagner. We got Wagner. And we can't find Davidson. Davidson, the common bilaterian ancestor. Paleogenomics. Again, gene regulatory. Okay, bookmarks. And essentially the bookmark. Oh my goodness. Nope. Oranges? Does he say apples and oranges? He does.
I think Austin wants to be unmuted.
Austin, what were you going to say?
We didn't mute him. He has to unmute himself.
Who muted Austin? Let's see. Edit name. I can't unmute you.
Oh, okay. I figured it out. No, yeah. I was just saying, like, it causes me physical pain sometimes the way creationists mangle macro and micro evolution. Sometimes I wish those terms had never been invented because they're of extremely limited use, and creationists have just completely co-opted them and mutated their definitions into something completely different from what they actually mean. It's just evolution. There is no micro, there is no macro. If anything, there's only micro evolution, and macro is just lots of micro evolution over a long time. Which, it's annoying that creationists want to kind of, mutilate those terms. It annoys me a lot.
Right. And then you've got, Davidson. He created a ton of concepts behind gene regulatory networks. And that was the picture that I had up for the thumbnail. It's a gene regulatory network. And Davidson did a lot of work on the evolution of body plans. And he's got a paper on the bilateria. And he has a theory about it that's a little bit different than what other people came up with. And anyway, Davidson's whole point is that you can't look at modification to a single gene, that what you're looking at is batteries of genes. And when you're looking at the evolution of body plans, you have to go way back to the Ediacaran, when there were a ton of different experiments going on for body plans, and a few of them got locked in. And once they got locked in, they took over the entire ecological system of the Earth, right? And there was no more. There wasn't a possibility to go for a vertebrate to suddenly evolve into a sponge. That it wasn't going to change. That his problem is that when you look at the same kinds of mechanisms that affect the finch's beaks, you're not looking at the right gene regulatory network. You got to look at these core networks, is what he calls them. And he's got a theory, and he So hence he came up with a lot of quotes when he was basically trying to get his idea out there, because his whole lab and all of his researchers were all caught up in this these gene regulatory networks and these diagrams. And that was his major contribution. And it was an unbelievable contribution. But he makes the case in all of his papers. He's got one, let's see, called the Evolutionary Bioscience as Regulatory Systems Biology. And he's just trying to make a point. He's not saying that evolution can't happen. It's not what he's saying at all. He's saying that Paul Nelson's simplistic idea about one protein being mutated and causing a change in body plans is not the way it works. That's not how it happened. So, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Sorry.
Years ago said what we see with things like moths versus the question of where moths
saying the
came
same
from,
thing.
these are fundamentally different problems, as different as apples and oranges. And we cannot understand the origin of the moth itself just from the small scale evolution that we see. Find the point at which the mistake was made. Now, it wasn't really a mistake. Anytime you do science, you have to make assumptions about the world. And the founders of textbook evolutionary theory said, let's assume that micro or small scale evolution and macro or large scale evolution are the same. Just add time to micro and you'll get macro. Dobzhansky,
Which is basically true. Because, like you said, Austin, it's, there are micro changes.
Yeah.
End up in the population, but as far as body, all the way back to the Ediacaran.
So this is one of the things creationists do that I hate the most. They do this argument where they're like, oh, evolutionists need time to rescue their deity is time, father time.
Yeah.
It's such a silly argument. I liken it to kind of like arguing that you can't possibly bake a cake because you put a tin of batter in the oven for 3 seconds and it didn't bake. No, it's not a rescue device. It's not a deity. It's just a part of the process that makes evolution happen. Like leaving the cake in the oven for more than 3 seconds is part of the process that bakes a cake. They always seem to argue against either, oh, you think these micro changes can produce whole new kinds of lives, or you think millions of years can produce whole new kinds of organisms. And it's like, no, it's not just one or the other. It's that process of micro changes over a huge, large amount of time, and it adds up, Yeah, that is a very annoying and consistently repeated argument that they use. And it's kind of silly because, like I said, it's just straw manning the process and then saying the process couldn't happen because your straw man version of it is, obviously not going to work.
Well, I also take issue with the use of the language like whole new kinds of life or whole new types of organisms, which isn't really accurately reflecting how organisms are, or well, at least current organisms are constructed and how they differ from one another. It's kind of what Nelson's doing here at comparing sea urchins to like fruit flies and saying, oh, these are completely different kinds of life without mentioning some of the intermediate features and some of the commonalities they do share. So, yeah.
So, but
Anyway,
they do embryology. They do embryology research, and they alter genes, and the body plan is altered. I just don't get. I don't get what this problem with saying that changes in allele frequency, which is changes microevolution, can't alter the body plan. You can make a chicken, and you can mess with the embryo genetically, and it will be born with teeth. And that's a change in body plan. So it is easy to make small changes and change the body plan. I don't get what the problem is. Maybe I'm just not sophisticated enough, which I would very, very easily admit. But it just doesn't seem like this is a problem.
It kind of depends what we mean by body plan here, but yeah, it is kind of matter. It's a matter of scale, but is kind of a little arbitrary at
For
times.
body plans, we're talking about early systems that hit the embryo, like deuterostomes and protostomes. You know,
Right.
whether butt comes first or mouth comes first, and
The highly
bilateria and
conserved
radiate.
pathways.
What's that?
The highly conserved pathways, basically the really
Yeah,
early
highly conserved pathways.
parts of
Right.
development.
Right, and that's this paper here by Davidson and Irwin from 2002, the last common bilaterian ancestor. They're talking about bilateria, the thing that he mentioned, the hypothetical. It had been thought that it had appendages and that it was more complicated. And Davidson is explaining why that probably can't work. The last common protostome deuterostome ancestor, or PDA. Here we discuss an alternative view in which the last common PDA had a less complex body plan than is frequently conceived. And this whole paper goes through his point on that, and he shows the A here, right here. That is what they used to think, and then when they did some phylogenetic analysis, they came up with a slightly different plan. You know,
Oh yeah, that's a
they were
more
wrong. You know,
phylogeny.
they changed the phylogeny, and here we have bilateria right here, coming out and
Right.
affecting Exodozoa and Lophotrochozoa, Deuterostomia, all of these. And we are up here in chordata, so we're right there. This is the vertebrate branch right here. These are the insects and all the other stuff, bryozoa, brachiopoda, and then way down here before the bilateria, we have the jellyfishes and the sponges. Very, very simple multicellular animals. And the whole thing that they're talking about is that these gene regulatory networks got locked in, and any change to them at all after they locked into the major clades would have killed the animal. So
Right.
basically, we didn't end up with any new innovations after the Ediacaran or
Right.
the
On the
Cambrian.
the early developmental scales, at least, yeah, purifying
Right.
selection would have
And
eliminated those kinds of changes.
And Davidson's point is that if the developmental networks got more complicated, they prevented any new change in body plans. So he goes back to a point when they were not as complicated, when these body plans were basically the microevolution that was happening. And it's possible that there were 100 different weird body plans back in the Ediacaran, all of which died out except for the 4 or 5 that we have now.
Right.
And that's what he's quote mining. So he's looking at this controversy basically, or slight disagreements on developmental biology. And we get into Evo Devo, you end up with a whole different group of biologists, right? And they fight a little bit with the Richard Dawkins of the world.
Yeah, kind of everyone fights with Richard Dawkins, to be honest.
Yeah. Survival of any of these lineages would require that there are numerous protostome and deuterostome forms that must have existed in the evolutionary period between the appearance of the PDA, whenever this occurred, and the appearance of the crown group protostomes and deuterostomes in the fossil records. So he's saying what I'm saying, that back in the Ediacaran, it was a Wild West show as far as body plans, and there were all sorts, and we found that in the Cambrian fossils, right? We found all these weird ass animals.
Yeah, the Ediacaran early Cambrian fauna were pretty bizarre. So
Yep.
And then they eventually transitioned to the more modern phyla level body plans. Like it's kind of the explosion in the Cambrian explosion is kind of faded somewhat over as we found more fossils, but
yeah,
unless you're a creationist.
Right, yeah, of course.
Let's see. Here's one of his potential gene regulatory networks. He's talking about how it gets locked in, how these body plans get locked in real early on. Here's some different genes that are common to all the body plans. And then the genomic toolkit of the PDA goes on about that. And I'm not sure,
especially when you look at like Hox genes or some other developmental regulatory genes, like when you compare very simple non-bilaterian animals or even animals like choanoflagellates, you find a lot of the genes were already present, and some of them got, like Hox clusters, for example, got duplicated a lot of times, and that may have been part of how some organisms became more complex, especially vertebrates and various types of fishes and whatnot. So.
And if you look at the Hox genes, you can see this duplication. And we're
Right.
Austin, are we going to do a stream on that soon? Are you there?
Yeah, go ahead. Have a drink of water. You want to do what was the stream you wanted to do on?
We were going to do it. We were going to do a stream on embryology, but now I'm probably going to be burnt out today. But
yes, I do still want to do that. We can do that next week. I figured this week I was going to do a brief live stream of I was going to not live stream. I was going to do a react to MC Toon's live stream last night, live in Antarctica.
Okay, good.
Talk about how flurfers are getting deprogrammed in real time and how amazing and kind of hilarious that is to watch. But yes, I would love to do embryology next week. We might have to do the week after next week, because I think next week Aaron Ra might be coming on to talk about taxonomy and phylogeny, which is his expertise. I've been trying to get him on. He's a very busy man, so his schedule. Yeah, it's been.
I managed to get him on like 3 times. You just send him an email. He will drop in, but he doesn't stick around very long. But I have had him on. And in the back room, I can tell you some amusing stories about when I met Aaron Ra.
That would be nice. He seems like a really nice guy. We're friends on Facebook, and that's how I've been communicating with him about my project. Trying to get him on to talk a little bit.
He's a huge, intimidating guy he's got a heart. He's really something.
That's the impression I get. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, nice. That should be fun.
Okay. We're going on here. I'm not sure where we're going. So anyway, but I was going to mention Hox genes. Hox genes are when segmented body plans started.
Right. Yeah.
And that happens after the core bilateria, protostome, deuterostome part. So if you look at the phases in embryology, you'll see that the Hox genes come into play during gastrulation is what it's called, when the organism starts to form different different layers. It's already done that, and now everything is going to start to change along the line.
The free germ layers have already formed, and now it's just like a tube that's becoming more and more segmented, basically.
Right, and the segments, one segment will communicate with the other, and there's just all sorts of mechanisms. And I'm hoping that the more prepared I get, Austin, the better we'll be able to explain some of the early development of embryos. And that'll be cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, just the Hox genes alone, I love those things, and I'm no expert on them, but I could easily talk about them for a good hour and a half or 2. They are so fascinating. They're really, really strong evidence of common ancestry, and they're also extremely useful to geneticists because they're allowing us to rewrite body plans at an embryological stage of development. And they're allowing us to take away limbs, to add limbs, to change limbs, to create huge morphological changes just by manipulating a few gene sequences. And it's crazy because Jim Bob was just in the chat earlier talking about, information. You can't create information. You create new information every time you fiddle with a Hox gene. It's incredibly easy to create new genetic information using those. And not only to create new genetic information, but to use deductive reasoning to figure out which, sequence affects what portion of the body plan, which sequence adds a leg to the abdomen or adds a leg to the midsection or adds a leg to the forebody, it's pretty interesting. Those alone, and they are kind of on the subject of embryology. And then when we talked about it the other day, I've been thinking about like all these big influencers that they mostly don't talk about science, but they do sometimes have guests on that talk about science, like Joe Rogan, who usually is talking about, just whatever nonsense is appealing to him. But he has had a couple creationists on. I want to see if I can maybe get on Joe Rogan's podcast or the Hawk Tuah Girls podcast, because they have so many followers. I think I could maybe get on the Hawk Tuah Girls podcast because of the joke we made, the Hawks Tuah, about the Hawks and how fun it is. We could maybe get her saying Hawks Tuah, and some of her audience might get some interest in evolution and biological science. I mean, I'm willing to talk about blowjobs if that's what it takes to get people interested. Let's go.
Right. Yep. So
you didn't hear that.
Yeah, right. Your kid is. To be clear, what's a blowjob, Daddy? To be clear, body plans refer to things like bilateria, protostomes, deuterostomes. The real core of the vertebrates. Having a spine, that sort of thing. The real core body plans, and what they're complaining about here is that things like which limb develops where. Putting the legs on a fly's head or whatever by modifying these Hox genes, that is a different developmental, it's in a different part of the gene regulatory network. They look at it as a huge network like a cloud, and there's a core part that really can't change. And that one creates what we call a body plan. That would be these clades, difference between a jellyfish and a vertebrate, or a sponge and a jellyfish. And the complaint and the quote mining that he's doing is based on these people saying that the stuff that, like Hox gene modification, things like that, are at the periphery, and they're not going to change body plans entirely. And so that's just a slightly different definition of body plan than the one that you were using. So, and forgive me for differing with you on that, Austin. So.
I think I can pardon you this time. Just don't let it happen again.
I won't let it happen again. Okay.
In the mid-30s said, we can't observe macroevolution. It took place over a long time. So what we have to do is take microevolution and extrapolate that over time. And he said, we'll do this reluctantly. We'll put it a reluctant.
This is 1937. You see this? This quote is from 1937.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, 1937.
Is anybody checking to see if he's even quoting it right or quoting it in context?
Yeah. Okay.
Who's going to go back and check a 1937 publication? I mean, is he really quoting it in context? Because creationists suck at doing things in context.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my sound cut out. Are you guys back?
I can hear you now. I can hear you now.
Okay, we're back. Okay, yeah, they suck at context. They never give you the context, and that's why he's quote mining Davidson so badly. Anyway, okay, I switched ahead a little bit to let's see. I think this one is what the evidence tells us.
Can an unsolved problem in evolution that's central to the theory itself persist for so long? Well, I'll tell you, we'll come back to this at the very end. It has to do with what we're going to let the evidence tell us. All right, we'll come back to that. But the problem arises at the intersection of three ideas, or if you think of it, three different parts of biological knowledge. One is how animal development works. One is the theory that may be false, that all the animals are related by common ancestry. And then the third is natural selection. And the paradox arises from a conjunction of what we know from each of those areas. Think about it this way. What do we know from development? Well, we know how animals are built. Almost all animals start as a single cell, a fertilized egg. That's how you began your existence, me, and so forth. Most, not all, but most animals start that way. The earliest stages of that process determine what follows. Certainly, no human parent sitting in an obstetrics waiting room wants to hear the doctor come in and say, Mr. Nelson, your daughter has a macromutation. Your newborn daughter has a macromutation, because we know from our experience that those kinds of changes are destructive, because they usually happen early in development and cascade throughout the whole process. So if we're going to change the form of an animal, you have to start early, because that's where the form is put in place. But now the paradox arises. Those kinds of mutations are the ones least likely to be tolerated by the embryo.
Can I raise a quick question?
The earlier you go in development, the more destructive mutations.
Notice he really sped past it. No doctor is going to say you have a macro mutation because they tend to be detrimental and blah blah blah. Is he forgetting all the babies that were born with neutral mutations that don't affect their ability to go on and live and procreate?
And the other thing, the doctor's never going to come out and tell you that your child had a mutation in one of these body plan networks, because you won't even know that you're pregnant if that happens. I mean, the organism dies extremely early, right? If that happens. So he's kind of stretching the truth here a little bit.
Well, he's also kind of fixing on the early developmental stages without talking about what we've been discussing, which is the not so early developmental stages where the body plan can be modified at that point once the kind of the groundwork is laid.
Hold up.
Yeah, if you have a child with a birth defect, it's going to be in one of these peripheral networks. It's not going to be in that core mechanism.
You're not telling me that an anti-evolutionist would stretch the truth. That's no. I don't know if I believe that. Come on. Be fair.
I don't believe it either. It's hard to believe. I got to be more fair with these guys.
Yeah, I think so.
Just being an old meanie. And I found my notes on the last quote pick. Maybe we'll get to them later, but we're past that now, so we'll go on. Okay. So I'm not sure where are we at here. What do I have for my next bookmark? John McDonald. Okay, 2227. So we're at 29. Yeah, we'll let them.
They affect more cells downstream. The bad effects cascade downstream and typically destroy the organism. And this was discovered in flies as a Nobel Prize-winning piece of research by this team, Christiane Nusslein-Volhard and Eric Wieschaus, in the late 1970s and early 80s in Europe. As I said, what they did is they looked at the problem right at where these three circles come together. And what they did was a kind of reverse engineering. Using fruit flies, they disrupted their genes, marching down the chromosomes of fruit flies, disrupting genes one after another. Then they asked the organism, what happens if we hit that gene? Will you develop? So we start on the left with the egg. You have this long developmental process leading to the fly. And by disrupting genes and their protein products at different points in development, they asked the fruit fly, did you need that protein for normal development? Or if we disrupt that protein, that gene and its protein product, what will be the downstream consequences? What they found was quite remarkable. Now, I told you there would be details. This is one of the details. This is a figure from their paper in Nature that ended up winning them the Nobel Prize. And I'll tell you what it shows. The left-hand columns.
This is what you were talking about, Austin, with modifying the body, basically the Drosophila. In fact, we were just talking about it. Modifying a few
What are they training for? I just need to know.
And the creationists will famously say that we have tried to make the fruit fly into a different species forever. No, we're not doing that. In order to do that, we would have to modify that entire regulatory network at its core. And that's not what we're doing. We're modifying Hox genes, or basically they use morpholinos, they call them. They're little kernels that lock onto DNA and knock out one gene. And we see what the effects are. And the reason we're doing this on the fruit fly is not to try to prove evolution or not to try to create a new species. We're trying to figure out how organisms develop. So we're trying to figure out how Hox genes affect things and all of that.
Right, exactly. Which we pretty much we have discovered a lot. One of the things we've discovered is that if you take a Hox gene from a mouse and you insert it into a Drosophilia's genome, it will not produce a mouse leg. It'll produce a Drosophila leg, which is really interesting. It seems as if the Hox gene doesn't tell the program how to build, whatever it is telling the Hox gene is telling it belongs there. It tells it just to do it, and then the organism interprets how to do it, and that's how you can take a mouse leg Hox gene and inject it into fruit flies genome in the abdomen section, and you'll end up with a fruit fly leg on the abdomen and not a mouse leg. Really super fascinating. And it works the other way too. You can take a fruit fly gene and put it into a mouse and it produces mouse features. It's really strong evidence of common ancestry. And you are correct that this particular experiment, its goal is not to produce speciation. It's to better describe the mechanisms that produce morphological change. But there are lots of Drosophila experiments, and there is another Drosophila experiment. It's called the Dodd Incipient Sexual Separation of Drosophila experiment. It was designed and performed by Diane Dodd, and she actually was able to produce a new species of fruit fly via sexual selection by creating geographic isolation between these two populations of fruit flies and manipulating their nutritional sources in their environment. She was able to make it so that population A would virtually never select population B as a viable mate. That is a sexually selective reproductive barrier between two populations of organisms that both have common ancestors. Super fascinating.
But you can't, it didn't turn into a pine tree. So evolution is just
it turned into a pine tree. Yeah. Okay, where are we at?
Fly. So in product, what will be the downstream consequences? What they found was quite remarkable. Now, I told you they are not going anywhere, because the consequences for normal fruit fly development are so severe that it destroys the organism. And this is, in fact, how they figured out how development worked. Perturb it and reverse engineer it. Disrupt the process and then look at what is affecting what. And they quickly realized that if you want a fruit fly at all, you cannot perturb its early development. The problem is, for macroevolution to occur, that's exactly where the mutations have to take place. Hence, you have this great Darwinian paradox. In order to macroevolve a species, if you will, you've got to have viable early acting mutations. Yet those are the ones that are by far the most destructive. Which means that natural selection cannot operate. Natural selection...
No, it doesn't. It simply means that you can't take a complicated organism and modify
He's picking up the car. He's picking up the
thing to live, basically. That's all it says. It doesn't say anything about early development and early speciation at the beginning of multicellular animals. Let's see if he's got a quote mine here. Phyla, let me see. Grandeur. Oh, I'm trying to make sure I didn't skip one. Contrary to classical, okay, there's the oranges. Where are we at here? We're at 27. Let's see here, 27, 26. Macroevolve a species, okay. Oh, let's see what he comes up with.
To effect macroevolution because the kind of variation that it needs is too destructive to animals. Ann Gauger, who's a developmental biologist, developmental and cell biologist that I work with at Discovery Institute. Ann
Gauger. She is a piece of work. she's done a number of creationist papers.
He's literally a frog.
The fossils of the Cambrian era raised the puzzle that Gauger had pondered while studying invertebrates. How did all these different body plans emerge? Of the 27 phyla recorded in the fossil record, an astonishing 20 of them emerged in the Cambrian explosion. Only 3 phyla appeared before the Cambrian, and only 4 others appeared after that. So basically, what I said about experimentation, that there are a whole lot of body plans developing. And the reason for that is that these animals had much simpler gene regulatory networks for body plan development at that stage. That was 600 million years ago, not long after multicellularity happened. That's what they're playing on. And they're saying that it's impossible, but it's not, because people like Davidson have spent their entire career showing us how it is possible. So,
you know what's I find amazing is the velocity and ease with which creationists utterly forget the word gradual. I feel like we need to go around and just tattoo the word gradual on their foreheads in red ink so that they don't forget it so frequently. Because this guy he's trying to say that if you change an organism too much, yeah, it might be evolution, but you're probably going to cause it to go extinct, which is why evolution doesn't happen like that. It happens gradually. It's not some huge leap. He's doing the classic thing where creationists seem to think evolution works more like it works in the Pokemon video games than how it, really works in real life. Like you get Charmander to level 16 and he turns into a Charmeleon. That's a lot of change. Definitely undeniable evolution, but that's not how it actually works. You're not going to see a Charmander birth a Charmeleon in real life. That's not what evolution is. Evolution,
Austin, I hate it that I know exactly what you're talking about. What with the Charmander thing? I just hate that. Well, please proceed.
Yeah, no. What evolution means is you're not going to see an organism give birth to a completely different species of organism. That would not be proof of evolution. I don't know what that would be proof of. Maybe magic, maybe a magical spell, maybe some Cinderella stuff. But it's not proof of evolution. Evolution just
Pokemon.
Yeah. Evolution just means that if you give birth to an organism, it's going to look like you, but at the molecular level, at the smallest level we can perceive, there will be microscopic differences. And the same is going to be true about their offspring and their offspring and their offspring. And if you add that up over time, you end up with a significantly different genome, a significantly different set of heritable characteristics, which that's all evolution is. It's just change in the heritable characteristics of a population over time.
Yep.
Yeah, sugar.
Yeah,
But with that, I think I need to get this little girl home and stop feeding her sugary donuts. It was nice stopping in.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for stopping by.
Okay.
See you, Austin.
Okay, so now they're talking about the magic bridge. The problem has never been solved by evolutionary theory, it says. And it's not because natural selection isn't real. It is real. It just isn't the right kind of process. Yes, it is. There was natural selection operating back then for those uber body plans, those core developmental networks. And Davidson spent his entire career showing us how that happened.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a a bait and switch sort of. He talks about natural selection and then goes to large mutations in these early developmental stages, and then he's back to natural selection again. So the flip-flopping here to kind of distract from the actual explanation involved.
Yeah, let's see. The same problem would arise if an animal. Okay. There's a part that's coming up here. Let me go ahead back to that, and we'll listen to it.
Magic bridge.
Not gonna listen.
Okay,
to
this
too
would be
much of
right
this.
at home in any Indiana Jones movie. The bridge is magic in the fudge as low beneath your feet. The minute you stop,
Magic
right
bridge,
there, that bridge is reproductive capability. Natural conditions is way over on the other side.
I much prefer
Problem
the
has
Who's
never been
Magic
solved
Bus.
by evolutionary theory. And it's not because natural selection.
What'd you say?
I much prefer the Who's Magic Bus.
Okay, start way over the bridge. Problem has never been okay. The process of living thing. The problem has never been solved by evolutionary theory. Is that where we're at? And it's not because natural selection isn't real. It is real. It just isn't the right kind of process to build living things. And that's where he's full of shit. In particular, to build animals where they didn't exist before, and the consequences for the Darwinian hypothesis are profound. Yeah, we'll go on.
Just isn't the right kind of process
Can I
to
ask a
build
question
living
real quick?
things before.
Yeah.
Is Nelson demonstrating an awareness of, genetic drift, insertion by viruses, recombination errors, duplication errors, and things like that? Is he isolating himself just to mutations, or is he saying all those mechanisms are unable to advance evolution?
Yeah, he's basically kind of getting us to focus on like neo-Darwinian evolution, or even earlier than that. Just basically just the mutation in a protein or in a close regulatory network or whatever that creates a gradual change. And Davidson's point was that that's not where it happens. It's more drastic changes that happen when animals were much simpler in body plans, basically.
And isn't it also true that there's certain regions on the genetic material that have protection mechanism against, alongside them, that other parts of the gene just don't? That would kind of make it hard for those, more basic genes to change.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. If they change, natural selection is going to get them right out of the gate. Basically, if these core networks change, because you're obviously not going to produce a human being that has radial symmetry, right, and no backbone. Yeah, and also happens to be a protostome. That's just not going to happen. That all happened when things were much simpler.
So in the rare case that way back when, a change in the body plan occurred and it was good, it was helpful, there were protection mechanisms in place to preserve that.
Yeah. And the other thing that was going on during that period is the development of cartilage and bone, basically, and cells that secreted calcium. And that's where we started to get a fossil record. So, I mean, that was all really important to development. And there were a lot of crazy body plan tryouts. Like every body plan was trying out for a part, right? And like 4 or 5 of them made it. That's it.
Yeah, a lot of experimentation going on, and only the ones we see today are the survivors.
Yeah. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I got about 5, 6 bookmarks left. So, but there's an important
exist before. And the consequences for the Darwinian hypothesis are profound.
Darwinian.
I showed you this slide before. This is what you would get in a textbook. It says that all the different animal groups came from this unknown common ancestor that we call Ur bilateria. Ur, by the way, is a prefix meaning original. You see it in biblical studies referring to the Ur texts that gave rise to the books of the Bible that we see. So that original bilateral form, if it was an animal, probably had about a few thousand cells, the same problem would arise. If it was an animal, it would have gone through a developmental process, and to change it into an arthropod or an echinoderm or a chordate, in other words, one of these different architectures, would require disrupting its early development, and you'd have exactly the same problem again. There's no reason to think that things were different in the Precambrian than they are today.
And they're showing that as kind of a segmented animal. And Davidson's point is it was not a segmented animal. And
Right,
didn't have
it's
any
more like
appendages, which you see.
the top image there, kind of a bit simpler.
Right. So if it had changed there, then it would not have disrupted the body plan so severely that the organism would have died, and natural selection would have worked just fine. And so his whole case against natural selection is based on conflating modern complex organisms with the Bilateria, which was, you know, I think they said it was like 580 million years ago that they found a what is it, Kimberella, I think was that a possibility, or was that I can't remember.
Well, I know they found 550 million years old is a fossil called Icaria variota. So, and that's a pretty simple fossil, so that could be a potential candidate.
Yeah, and then he says something.
I told you this was a problem that I first encountered as a student. Much skinnier. I told you this was a Precambrian than they are problem again.
Here we go.
There's no reason to think that things were different in the Precambrian than they are today.
There isn't? Do you agree with that? Do you think it was different in the Precambrian than it is today?
I mean, in terms of development, maybe. Well, the Precambrian environment was definitely different. But
yeah, and the kinds of animals that we had in the Precambrian were very different than what we have today.
right.
And yeah, so it was very, very different than what it was back then. He claims they were the same. No reason to think that it wouldn't be the same.
This was a problem that I first encountered as a student. Much skinnier and with a lot more hair. A long time ago, I'm telling you. It's well known. It's a well-known problem. So John McDonald, in this paper in the early 80s, and this is another detail, there's some technical language here, let me translate it for you. He's saying the genes that we see in populations today that obviously vary, and you look around this room, there's a lot of variation. Hair color, height, eye color, you name it. Homo sapiens has a lot of variation. Those genes don't affect the overall body plan. What doesn't vary? The genes that build your brainstem. The genes that give you a heart that's connected to your lungs. The genes that give you a spinal column and so on.
Okay. Let's go back to John McDonald. Okay, these loci are obviously variable. Okay, so let's little window. Okay, here's let's see, I gotta get this fixed.
Oh, you actually found the book.
Yeah, okay, that's the wrong book. Okay, it's something else. Where are you? Why can't I get to you? I don't understand. Okay, there we go. Okay, so basically this is it's kind of at the end of a section. In other words, the results of the last 20 years of research on genetic basis of adaptation has led us to the great Darwinian paradox. Those loci, okay, are obviously not obviously variable within natural populations, do not seem to lie at the basis, right? Then he goes on the case for de novo adaptive variation. And for the next, I don't know, 100 pages or so of this book, he explains how it happened. He's talking about, this is called The Molecular Basis of Adaptation. Let's see, what's the whole name of the book. I'm putting a lot of this stuff in my description. I think this is a paper, 1983. molecular basis of that, a critical review of relevant ideas and relevant ideas and observations. And let's see, it's a review. Let me go look at the thumbnails. What do we got here? So yeah, this is a paper, and it's a pretty extensive paper, molecular basis of adaptation. And this is from 1983 again. This is just when we really started to get a hold of things, and we had not sequenced any genomes yet. And we had not figured out a whole hell of a lot about evolutionary biology at this point. But we knew a bit, okay? Now let's see, what do we got here? Average proportion of heterozygous loci. And so the whole paper is about that problem and what it means for development. And at no point does McDonald say that natural selection is dead. This doesn't work that way. Hang on a second. Oh, I brushed my cat today. I'm coughing up hairballs. Let's see. Direct approach. I haven't read this whole paper. I didn't have time to read this one, guys. But anyway, the quote line is at the bottom.
Huh.
And he misinterprets them entirely. Let's see. The genomes are higher several times in excess of coding requirements. Anyway, okay, we'll go on. I'm going to go to the next bookmark. We're getting tired, Andrew? You getting tired?
Or I guess how much else did you want to review?
I've only got about 5 bookmarks left, I think.
I'm sure Andrew has a wild college party to go to. So we need to be respectful of that.
We need to.
Yeah, it's just getting close to lunchtime for me, and I also got other stuff I want to do today, or other stuff I
better
set up
stuff.
today, so.
Thank you. Oh, burn. Okay.
Huh?
We'll try to go through it a little faster.
All right, sorry, that sounded rude. I like Christmas stuff coming up that I gotta get started.
Yep, I got to get that
He has
started.
a life and he has other plans. We get you, buddy. We get you.
We get
no rudeness taken. No offense.
Okay, we're coming up on day.
Eric Davidson has been quite outspoken about this. In a paper last year, he said, textbook theory gives rise to lethal errors. You don't have to read all of that. I'll tell you what he's saying. He's saying what we see as viable.
Okay, you don't have to read all that. He's going to tell you what it says, right? So let's see. Take a look at this quote, and then let's go. Is his book, is that Eric Davidson Neo-Darwinian Theory Gives Rise to Lethal Errors. Hang on a second. Let me find it. Common Bilaterian, not that one. Here we go. Oh, that's Wagner, Butcher, molecular basis of adaptation, McDonald. Sorry, guys. Neo-Darwinian. I hate myself right now. I have too many windows open.
Too many tabs open.
I have too many tabs open. Oh, where are they? Okay, where's Neo-Darwinian?
What Dave says in the side chat.
Oh, okay. No, that's not what it's called. Let's see. Where did this one come from? The arrival of the fittest. Is that what he says? All of these assumptions are counterfactual. That's Wagner, Davidson. Hang on a second. Butcher. I just had it up, which really kind of drives me crazy. I keep doing this. I wish there was a way to do this a little easier. Okay. Counterfactual. Here we go. Okay. So this is it. So views of body plan evolution. And so in addition, it gives rise to lethal errors in respect to the evolutionary process, which we've established if you modify those early networks. Neo-Darwinian evolution is uniformitarian in that it assumes that all processes are gradual. And he's saying that he's kind of going with what we would probably call punctuated equilibrium, maybe, that it would be not so gradual, that there would be massive body plan changes in these early organisms. And this paper is the evolutionary bioscience as regulatory systems in biology. And he's making a case again for his regulation. So that's what this is about. And
Yeah,
this cannot be, okay, then all of these assumptions are basically counterfactual. This cannot be surprising, since the neo-Darwinian synthesis from which these ideas stem was a pre-molecular biology concoction focused on population genetics and adaptation natural history, neither of which have any direct mechanistic import for genomic regulatory systems that drive embryonic development of the body plan. You see that? That drive the embryonic development of the body plan. Okay. So what is he saying? That these gene regulatory networks are what drive this thing that Nelson is saying is impossible. Right. So Davidson completely disagrees with him. And he goes on to talk about how these GRNs work, basically. And here is okay, nice little diagram where gill slits happened. What is it? Stereome is a kind of tissue, I think, in sponges or something. I can't remember. And pentrameral symmetry, bilateral symmetry up here. Where's bilateral? Probably, I'm not sure where that pops up. But anyway, this paper is about how it happened. And like I say,
it's about chordates and echinoderms specifically.
Yep. Yeah, and he lists, I think, 6 different aspects of the solution to this problem. So this problem that Nelson is claiming that Davidson agrees with him can't be solved is basically, there are 6 different solutions to this problem. And he goes ahead and outlines them. And then he has hundreds of papers to go through. So he's done a ton of work, and he did a huge book, which I'm going to try to read. Anyway. So,
what was the title of this paper? I might want to go read it.
This one is Davidson. Hang on a second. Let me go to the top. I can do that. Come on. Oh, my mouse sucks. It keeps double clicking when I try to roll my wheel. Evolutionary bioscience. Okay, let me go ahead and put that one in the.
Yeah, put that in the description if you don't mind.
Description. Where's my description? It's back here. Let's see. Cloning, inbox, video details. Got it. Okay, that's why that's there. I'll put all the papers that I'm referencing in the description eventually. I just got a lot of work to do. Okay. Okay, so there's that, and I think we're pretty much done. Let me just go ahead and check our other bookmarks. And see what we got. Okay.
Yeah, I think Donald Kronos, his last comment summarizes it pretty good, based on what we've been talking about.
Bottom line, we have here is what's next. So let's see.
So where do we go? Well, it's time to go back to the philosophy of science and that second part of my subtitle, the nature of evidence. If you see something like this and you take it seriously, it tells you something about nature herself. It tells you to look for a kind of cause. If you're going to build that magic bridge of development, well, where once that egg begins to divide, it's got to get all the way over, in our case, to the trillions of cells that you see in an 8-pound baby. That kind of process is telling you, look for a particular kind of cause, one that can do the following, that can aim at a distant functional target. Natural selection is very powerful, but it has no foresight. It's powerful, but very, very dumb. It cannot look into the future to build something that will be needed in the distance. What kind of cause can reuse modules? You know, the proteins in your
Evolution.
body are reused over and over and over in different.
Yeah, because a lot of it's from duplication and co-option. So
Yep.
that's
I'm
probably
here on Sunday morning. That's because we have a huge is built. What kind
I
of
think-
cause can build different systems that are different right from the start? What I call here primary discontinuities, where body that are identical to the, but in your body, those proteins will build a compound eye.
I'm going to go through his bookmarks pretty quickly.
Excuse me, a camera eye, and universally unique.
Intelligence of mind. Okay. So anyway, yeah, I think we're.
that's his answer. It's all.
Yeah, that's his answer. Intelligent of mind can build it. You know.
Not just
Master
any
of
mind,
is-
a disembodied mind outside of time and space.
Right, one that we've never observed, never demonstrated, and you know whatever.
Right.
What it comes
And
down to
strangely, it
is
agrees with us on all weird, all issues.
Right. Right.
yeah, okay. What it comes down to is that later stages of development evolve to work within the environment produced by earlier stages of development, so they tend to do better in that environment. Basically, the organism becomes its own environment when it develops. And when an organism develops, it's very much like it evolves into an adult phase of the organism. And it has an environment. And that environment starts out being the mother's egg or womb, and then goes on to be the different parts of the animal that have developed. So when the liver develops because the heart sends out little morphogens that communicate with the gut to tell it to start forming the liver tissue. So it becomes its own environment. So,
Right.
so what do we go here? Biological evolution, just one tiny sliver of evolution as a whole. So that's the framework that I evaluate it within. Yeah, there's an evolving earth and environment and world at the same time. And you get into niche building and all the things that they list in the extended synthesis, which are all the things that we're actually studying and we're aware of today. We're not blindsided by any of this shit.
Right.
Okay, so then he's got a little thing on methodological naturalism. And I want to ask a question about intelligent design. Yeah, methodological naturalism. Okay, right here.
But if we go back to our initial diagram here, let's say you've got the thing filled right up to the top. You've got all the evidence anyone could ever want. If you take that rule seriously of methodological naturalism that tells you you're not allowed to infer an intelligent cause, even if the evidence indicates that, this is pointless. There's no reason even to bother with it.
Well, that's a
The
bullshit.
evidence
Even
is
if.
powerless. And what happens is you have to say you can't get there from here, no matter what you show me. So when you
Oh, that's not what it's saying.
Yep. Okay, so that's enough of him.
Yeah, what evidence is there legitimately that leads you to conclude intelligence, directing evolution? There's just
Right.
nothing.
It's kind of the two strikes there. One, he doesn't offer any actual evidence for specifically pointing to intelligent design, and two, he doesn't correctly define methodological naturalism.
Am I right in thinking? Am I justified in thinking that because of all those guitars on the stage around him, he's not speaking at a scientific conference?
I would agree with that presumption.
That there's not going to be a question and answer session where peers in evolutionary biology, colleagues or whatever, ask him clarifying questions or even try to rebut him.
Yeah, I think he was at.
Intelligent design proponent going to a scientific conference. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think he was at Biola University or something. Basically,
apologetics.
Preaching to the choir. You know, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, we got. Let's see, briefing doc. I'm not sure where I got this from. I think. This is a doc that I got from AI, basically, that analyzed a whole bunch of papers. and they're talking about the limitations of existing paradigms. Neo-Darwinian approach, Davidson asserts that the approach is irrelevant to body plan formation, as it focuses on continuous small-scale changes in protein coding sequences, neglecting the complex regulatory systems driving development. So Davidson is just talking about a different kind, a slightly different variation or flavor of evolution than what we teach at the very beginning when we teach gradual change, or very small mutational changes. So.
It's still change. It still involves mutation and natural selection. It's just a different scale, different example of change.
Yeah, and he's talking about developmental gene regulatory networks as the drivers of body plan evolution. Nowhere is Davidson saying that it couldn't happen. He's telling you how it happened. That's his whole career, basically. And canalization is how basically explains living fossils and why we are stuck with the body plans. Like, we are never going to evolve into an insect or a tomato.
Right.
For instance, it just can't happen. It would have to start with single-celled animals and work its way all the way up again through very simple multicellular animals. And now here's the problem. We've studied embryology very seriously on about 4 or 5 different typical organisms. Mice, we got the zebrafish, we've got echinoderms, we got chickens, and we have humans, which we've done a lot of work on as much as we can. And what am I missing? Xenopus, the frog. And we have got the genomes of about like 0.03% of all the animals that are out there.
Right.
And we
don't
got a
forget
lot of work to do.
nematodes, C. elegans, and Drosophila.
Oh, C. elegans, right. Yeah. C. elegans, we mapped out every single cell and every single neuron and what it does. And we have a tremendous amount. And Drosophila, I guess we got the entire brain map now for Drosophila.
Yeah.
He's talking about crown group DGRNs, and those are the things that exist as clades today. And Davidson concludes that understanding body plan evolution necessitates a shift from traditional evolutionary approaches to a systems level perspective, focusing on DGRNs. Now, why would he say that? He spent his entire career working on DGRNs. His laboratory was basically based on DGRNs, right? He's going to have a little bias, but I agree with him. He's right. He's going in the right direction. So
I mean, it's not necessarily mutually exclusive between development and evolution. So
DGRN is default gene regulatory network.
Yeah, developmental gene development.
Okay, so I learned something. Cool.
Oh, I got some more links
are
to
always
put
fun.
in there. I don't know what all these links are, but I'm going to throw them in my description because we want to be thorough. And let's see what else we get. What else do I have here? The bottom line, and then we go through some stuff. And he's got some more slides, intelligence, blah blah blah. So now, okay, if we were to take intelligent design seriously, and we were to say, "Oh my God, it looks like intelligent design did this." What do we? So and we get a grant. You and I, Andrew, we get a grant for $100 million to basically present our new idea about intelligent design and how intelligent design created a body plan.
Right.
What are we going to do with that money? You have any idea?
Bible, I guess.
Bible. Bible. Oh no, we could buy Trump Bibles. We'd be able to buy a lot less. Yeah, we could buy Trump Bibles with that money.
I mean, but yeah, like how are you gonna? What research are you going to do? What experimentation are you going to perform? What tests are you going to perform? Like that's why intelligent design isn't science. It doesn't lead to any further investigation.
Right.
It's making a claim that's pretty much just an argument from ignorance, basically.
Yeah. So let's see, we wake up and our car is hung up on top of a small tree in the front yard, and there are beer bottles all around. The car door is open. The front door is open. My son's bedroom door is open. He is laying beside his bed with a bottle of beer, passed out, fully clothed, but disheveled. Car keys by his side. Did this happen by intelligent design? Was it my son that did it, or did God do it? Did God do this? Now, if my son wakes up and tells me that, no, Dad, you're ruling out, you're using methodological naturalism because you understand that I can drive the car and I drink a little bit when you're not looking. And that's what we're dealing with here.
Right.
So if we're going to say that God did this, son, I mean, I want to keep an open mind. God may have hung the car up and thrown the bottles around, thrown you by the side of the bed and thrown the car keys at you. So God did all of that. And that's what you have to do if you accept intelligent design as science. You have to stop asking any other questions and just say that God did it because God's omnipotent and he can do whatever he wants.
The thing about science and methodological naturalism, you're not excluding a priori, like conceiving of that kind. Oh, God did this kind of idea, but the thing is, you go with explanations based on the data you have available and the processes that you already know about, which of course are typically natural processes by definition. So
right,
it's
and the reason we know that that intelligent design is at play when we see a car or we see a watch
is because we already saw them design it.
We know about intelligent designers are called human beings.
Right.
We have never seen any other kind of intelligent designer.
Right.
Octopus,
exactly.
Some animals create habitats. Anyway, so this talk was given to the Saddleback Church members, and the Saddleback Church was a fundamental Baptist church that kind of fell apart in the last 10 years. This was 11 years ago.
Right.
And they sell all kinds of stuff. They sell seminars and here's an article about the Saddleback. I think it's what happened to the Saddleback Church or something like that. Because apparently in Baptist news, it disappeared.
It was a kind of a legendary church because of the.
Oh, you heard of it?
Oh yeah, they were big back in the 80s and 90s.
Huh.
Okay.
The pastor who founded it wrote the I think it was him who wrote the I'm not going to say because I may be mixing up two mega pastors, but he was a mega pastor. He had this model of church development and toured and wrote books and all that, and people modeled their churches after their church, or tried to anyway. And so it just came to the end of its cash cow cycle, and now they're just trying to get more and more money.
Yep. Wow. Yeah, it's first I heard about it. It's pretty. They had a lot of serious discussions about evolution because apparently they need science in order to make them believe in God for some reason. I don't know why.
Right. But like I said, it's no longer, faith isn't enough for them. They have to convince other people with science.
Right.
Oh,
yeah, they have
misrepresentation of science in this case.
Yeah. What we got here? At the location of a vehicle evolves, an abrupt change such as hitting a large tree would tend to halt that line of evolution. Yep.
Okay. Do you remember a book way back when called The Purpose-Driven Life?
Don't think so.
It caught on, and it was just, it was just hot. It was top #1 seller for years, and that it was written by that founding pastor, Rick Warren. So yeah, he's a Southern. He was a former Southern Baptist. He may still consider himself Southern Baptist. I don't know. I don't know what happened to him in all this, but yeah, he was the guru pastor. That's when churches started trying to adopt their growth model to contemporary music, needs-based, issues-based. What do the prospective members want, and they started adapting their approach, so they would change their style of preaching and things like that. Yeah, that kind of shocked me to see that it was at Saddleback.
Let's see, purpose-driven life. I found it in my library. Let's see, appeared to be purpose-driven natural process. I thought maybe they referenced the book, but they didn't. So this is J.P. Moreland. You know him and Eric Hernandez are buddies. J.P. Moreland. I think he's a theistic evolution, and he has a book. But no, I don't have purpose-driven life. But okay, so I have to look that one up.
It's not a scientific book. It's a how to live your best life kind of book. Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay. So he did.
Basically, you need God, and you need to do this and that and the other.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of the stuff they were hawking on that on the site I visited had to do with that. So, anyway. Okay, that's probably why I don't know it. Anyway. Okay, guys.
Bookmarks to cover, or does that pretty much go over everything you want to review?
I think there was one final bookmark. Let's see at the end. Hang on a second here. And this is real, but it didn't make animals. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know. We'll just listen to this.
Very dumb, and it did not build animals. If you're interested, there's a special offer for Saddleback members. You can download 3 ebooks.
There you go.
For short.
That's it. He's going to sell stuff now. That's all he's got. That's all we got.
Reaching over. Time to sell the merch.
Let's see. By the way, a bit of humor. When I first saw the title of this episode, I thought Rage Against Identification. Why? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, maybe I could have renamed it Rage Against ID. Creationist Paul Nelson. You got to read the second part of the title before you make a decision.
Just a final note. Apparently, Rick Warren wasn't so regressive that he didn't approve the ordination of women. So he was kicked out of the Southern Baptist Convention in 2021, 2022, something like that, for being willing to ordain women. So I don't know if there was any kind of morality scandal or whatever on his part, but at least he had that. At least he was willing to allow women to spread Christian bullshit.
Yeah, the Baptists are having a hell of a fight over a number of different things, and Saul Cordova's involved in some of that. And the woke Baptists are really pissing a lot of other Baptists off, and that's probably why Rick Warren ended up getting tossed. So, because that would piss them off, letting women have a part in the church. I mean, God, what's next? They're gonna let dogs have a part in the church too. It's like, what's next?
Sure, they think that way.
It's a slippery slope, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Gur and I chatted on Snata after we wrapped up the review last night.
Oh yeah, Gur showed up. Haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, I did see that. And then they went on and they did a Jay Dyer thing on Jay Dyer's transcendental argument. And I was in the chat at about 12:30, and I didn't want to get on because there were too many people in there. But
yeah,
I do want to do the tag thing with Jay Dyer. They got the whole presuppositional thing is real irritating.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, okay, I think we're done.
Okay,
I think we did.
Cool.
Andrew? Well, thanks, Andrew, for I dug you out of your schoolwork.
Yeah, Andrew, it was good to chat with you again.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty much done with finals for now, so I got more time now to dunk on creationist.
Okay, in terms of semester hours or whatever they call them, credits, where are you in your college education right now?
So this was just the first semester at the university I'm going up, I'm doing it all online right now, so probably.
So you're like a sophomore, junior?
Yeah, kind of. Some of the classes I already have credit for from I guess transfer credit and AP test exams and stuff
So
like
after
that.
the
So
semester, you have like 60 credit hours or more.
I have to check to see what the specific numbers are. I don't remember offhand, but yeah, I after this probably uh maybe like halfway there, or I still have a couple more semesters like this to go. So yeah, I'm kind of
Well,
just starting off now.
it will get more fun to be in college. It might be still a hassle and stressful and time crunch, but it'll be more fun once you start taking more courses that are related to your major.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Okay, we had a pretty lively chat that I'm going to have to read. Theology and philosophy discussions. What's his name? Is that Lion? No, that's not Lionheart. What the hell is his name? JG was here.
Yeah.
Jim Bob and his clan were here. I'm sure a lot of
Right.
wonderful things were said over that.
Do we really need to keep these people that you really haven't interacted with in a while as moderator status because they haven't been posting links or anything?
Yeah,
Which one? Like,
to be honest.
There was a Mitchell McCall or McCall Mitchell, something like that. Never heard of before, but maybe y'all had a discussion once and you gave the person mod powers so that they could the link.
Okay.
There's of course Jay. I don't know if you want to keep him on mod status. That's just up to you. You know, do you think you're going to be having more interactions with him that require a link? And then just other people that maybe have disappeared over the years that you know you might not want to keep in moderator status because you know of links that can be posted that might not be so good.
Right. I'm working on some of that right now. We'll take a look at it. Jim Bob isn't moderator stat. Oh, it's Captain Desk removed a comment made by Jim Bob. Why'd you do that?
He was getting a bit spicy in the chat, it seems.
What
was it?
Can you put that comment in the private chat?
Let's see. No, there's just several. Okay, that's one of them. I'm not sure what he got removed.
Some rude names.
Yeah, it was something about calling people rude names.
Yeah.
Yeah. Information, data plus semantics. God damn. I got to turn that feature off. I can't figure out
that Mitchell McCall person because I just basically told him don't be pasting or writing large blocks of scripture into the chat.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just totally unrelated. So
here we go. Made by Jim Bob. Not sure what he said. Blocked already. Okay, so it was earlier than that. Trying to figure out what he got blocked for. Okay, we're going to end the stream and we'll take a look at it and so we can figure it out.
When he said blocked already, he had just been timed out, so he was blocked after that comment. Blocked already.
Right.
So
yeah, I didn't ask for the assertion that you value something actively. I'm asking you to. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what it is.
I didn't really notice.
They will tell us. Yep.
All right. Well, Andrew, it was great to talk to you.
Yep. Thanks for having me on. Hope we can do more of these review discussion. If I have any conversations with SFT or any of his guys.
Yeah.
In the future, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the creationist evolution. I've got a whole bunch of videos I like to talk about intelligent design. Stephen Meyer and who's the other jerk off? Behe, whole bunch of them. And
okay, here's something you might want to look at if you're looking for fodder for anti-creationist stuff. Professor Dave recently did a reaction to real life radio.
That was hilarious.
Real science radio. It's a YouTube channel, and I call them the Statler and Waldorf of young Earth creationism. You probably need to be reminded of the Muppet Show and those two old dudes up in the balcony.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they remind me of, and they're silly
Yep.
and stupid, and you might have fun reacting to some of their stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they spend a lot of time on cosmology, so they might be fun for you, Andrew, to listen
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen some. I've looked at some of their lists of reasons why the Big Bang is wrong and that kind of
Yep,
stuff.
yep.
I'm
Yep.
always open to chatting about evolution and cosmology and stuff. So, could be dumb fun to review sometime in the future.
Oh, he called Austin autistic. Okay.
Yeah, Jim Bob did.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna shoot her in the head.
All righty.
World.
Thanks for watching, all.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah, thank you guys. Even you bad guys. Thank you too.